Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to all of you on behalf of IPAC News Network to the third Global Education and Skills Conclave. This is the second day of the 3 day conclave, and we had a very interactive and interesting inaugural session yesterday, attended by senior government and policymakers from education department, from both central and state levels, as well as different academic bodies and councils. And since we are running two parallel tracks on higher education and schools, we had six panel discussions yesterday and already three in the morning from the morning today. So this panel discussion is on academia industry collaboration and how the industry, academic should look at mapping the curriculum to the industry requirements. So before I introduce the panelists, it would be pertinent for me to mention all the sponsors without whose support this event would not have been possible. So I just our state partners, the Education Department of states of Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Gujarat, and Uttarakhand. We had government supporting partners from Department of Science and Technology, from AICTE, from Quality Council of India. We had Innovation Norway as a country partner. Dell and Intel are our presenting partners. Microsoft is a technology partner. ViewSonic is a co-partner. Samsung is a display partner. Fortinet is a security partner. Crestron is a gold partner. Myanmar Technologies, Finance Peer, and MapMy India are associate partners. Audio Life is our sound partner. FPJ Education is our education partner. UniApply is a school admission partner. Chitkara University or university partner. Jaipuria Group of Schools or group school partner. And Global Indus School, Glendale Academy, and Central Public School are our school partners. Without any further ado, let me introduce the eminent set of panelists we have with us today. We have Dr. Roshan Lal Raina, Vice Chancellor of Jaipur National University. Welcome, Professor Raina. We have with us Professor Madhulika Kaushik, Pro Vice Chancellor, Usha Martin University. Welcome, Professor Kaushik. We
Thank you, sir.
have with us Professor Shrujata Shahid. She's a Vice Chancellor of IILM University. Welcome, Professor Shahid. We have with us Yashwant Shivaprakash. He is the CEO of Audio Life School of Sound Engineering. Welcome, Yashwant. And to moderate the discussion today, we have Pankaj Jain, Regional Director, Indian Subcontinent of UTS College of Australia. Welcome, Pankaj, to the show. So, with that, I'll now like to hand it over to Pankaj. It's your platform, and I'm sure we will come up with certain best practices which can be followed in academia industry collaboration. Over to you, Pankaj. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot, and welcome to all the panelists. So, I think the topic is very interesting, as we just discussed. Also, it's academia industry collaborations mapping curriculum with the industry demands. So, how I will start? I'll give like 2 3 minutes to everybody for every questions. Like we have some questions we thought. So, and I'll ask the panelist. I'll announce my name, and we'll go further. So, Dr. Rena, I'll ask the first question to you. What do you think is the current status of industry academic partnerships, especially for research work in institutions we have in India? Sorry, I think you are on mute. Yes.
I repeat what I said. Thank you, Pankajji. Thank you, organizers. And thank you, all the esteemed panelists, for sparing your time to discuss and deliberate upon something which is need of the hour, which is academy industry collaboration. It is not NEP 2020, it is not UGC, it is not AICT, it is not any accreditation and recognizing committees like NAC have been talking. All of these regulatory bodies and implementing agencies have been talking in very loud and clear terms that industry academia interface has to happen. But my submission is, while to Pankaj's point, I will just share with you 10 very small but bullet based points to respond to this question. To me this is anywhere and everywhere being talked about, discussed, but to my amazement, to my displeasure, by and large it is receiving lip service. Any seminar, any conference does talk about industry academia interface, saying that you guys produce people and they are not employable. So all of this is happening and we are conscious of it. But at the end of it, it is remaining confined to the discussions in seminars, get togethers, meets like this. My submission is, let this discussion get translated to what is happening in academia in terms of really the three critical aspects of teaching learning process. Let it get translated in terms of curriculum design, in terms of curriculum delivery, and in terms of curriculum assessment, by ensuring representation, if not more, at least 50-50% in all academic bodies. Could they be boards of studies? Could they be academic councils? Could they be research boards? Could they be any other academic body? So, if it starts from there, then we will see academy in industry interface happening in what we teach, how we teach, who does the teaching, how is the assessment and evaluation being taken care of. So I would suggest the first point, let it move from lip service to the actual delivery at the classroom level, not get confined to the boardroom discussions. Number one. Number two, I said, let us pledge in academia, whichever academic body we have to discuss and deliberate upon courses, course curriculum, course contents, all the parameters of course outline, let it be represented by 50-50 from academics and industry. The third thing, I would say anybody and everybody does talk about, hey, internships, they are integral. But look at, I was heading a university about a month back or 2 months back for 7 years. Each and every program, whether it is in design, management, or engineering, because the university is very small but beautiful in these, it is integral part. Summer internships and also practice schools are integral part of the curriculum. What happens if a student in engineering is going to industry, not for a day, not for a week, not for a fortnight, but at least for a full semester, right? Then the learnings get translated, really. So that has given us rich dividends. So I would make sure and earnestly request, let this be integral part of curriculum design and delivery, the internships, not the way that it is currently happening. Are our faculty, are our academic bodies regularly in touch with whosoever is mentoring the student in the industry on whatever kind of a project? Is there a regular feedback mechanism on all of that? So time will not permit me to elaborate on that, but I want this to happen. Fourth thing, we all of us have in our situations that we must have industry expert sessions, but the way they are organized and the way they are integrated with course curriculum, I see much room and scope there to improve. What we said, what we did, if a course is being taught on transportation or any other area of knowledge, so we have identified these sessions, maybe 5 sessions in a course of 30 sessions, or 6 sessions in a course of 30 sessions must be and will be better delivered by people from industry. We will not call them out of the top. We'll make sure those industry sessions are embedded in the regular course curriculum flow. Whenever that session, as per its turn, happens, and that session is delivered by the industry, not that we have segregated, oh, this session will take up later. The flow gets broken, the integration gets broken, and the feel and flavor of industry getting integrated into academics does not happen. So that is number 4. 5 point, we have also talked about the agenda: project based learning, experiential learning, learning to learn. Now, all of us talk about, all of us are doing. Let me tell you, the real feel is we are really far away from that. And this is one area, if we take it religiously in our classrooms, this will not happen without active and proactive. Why active? Proactive involvement of experts from the industry. So let us make sure that whenever we are teaching them sessions which have industry inputs, which have real hands-on inputs, let those sessions be handled by academy and industry in collaboration. Then only that real gain, real knowledge, practical insight, industry exposure will happen. We do talk about, national education policy also talks about collaborative teaching, where 3 people are teaching, 4 people are teaching a course. I, for one, at my previous place, designed a course which was to be taught by 5 teachers. It had 12 credits, but we made sure that was a team taught course. 3 people were from academics and 2 people were from industry. So, if that collaboration happens at that level, which will ensure seamless integration, then that collaborative learning, collaborative teaching, learning to learn, project based experience will happen. Seventh
Professor
point,
Rana, yeah,
I'll
yeah,
just
Professor Rana,
close
can I?
in.
Yeah, okay.
I'll close in a minute. Seventh point, I would like the panel members to delve a little deeper into it. It has given rich dividends. Faculty going, like the students going to the industry, faculty, depending upon their interest, depending on their specialization, are also seconded for a term to industry in their preferred chosen areas. Then they will have a feel, and then they will plow back the learnings. Eighth point, as was talked about in this, new age technologies. Whether a student is pursuing even management, engineering, medicine, any agriculture, let us make a conscious effort that each and every guy is exposed to these new age trendy romantic technologies of artificial intelligence, internet of things, so on and so forth. And ninth is, we have to understand what is the difference between skill and competency enhancement courses and value-added courses. And we have also to look at what the national education policy talks about value-adding courses in terms of getting a feel and flavor of nationalism, patriotism, value, culture, and ethics. If we look at these kinds of components, I think we will be nearing our journey of academy industry collaboration. I stop here and hand it over to Pankaj sir for taking
Thank
it
you.
forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Rana. You have given a broad agenda for all of us to talk. So thanks a lot. You have made a lot of 10 points. We could only do 9, but we'll come up back to you. Now, I will come over to Professor Madhulika ji, who's the Vice Chancellor of Usha Martin University. Madam, what do you think? What are the views, or how can we
Yeah, thank you,
take
Dr.
this
Jain.
topic further? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Jain, for giving me this opportunity. And I agree with Professor Rena in the sense that when we talk about industry academia collaboration, the discussion is more about the lack of it in the present status rather than the practices. I mean, what are the trends that are being practiced? So we all know that if we compare ourselves to some of the global patterns and some of the Ivy League university, we are woefully behind. But if you look at the words of Professor Bennett, who's actually the industry academia dean at Stanford, she says these are practices that take generations to develop. I mean, they take a long time to develop, and there is an orientation that the university has had. Now, we already, if we talk about our own Asian, and I've served for about 7 years in Malaysia. It's similar in that part of the world. If we look at the universities and institutions, while we have allowed private institution in higher education to be practiced by all of these private players, there is still a sort of a distinction that is practiced not only by the government in terms of grant of research funds and so on, but also by the industry. Therefore, uh, and all of these Ivy Leagues that started with major industry collaboration are all private institutions. They Stanford started as a private institution, Princeton started as a private institution, and so on. And they developed on the basis of their deep inroads into the industry, because then the industry also began sanctioning chairs and research agendas. And sometimes they were criticized on the basis of having their research agenda actually determined by industry, but that's another story, and we'll talk about it sometime else. Now, my own contention here is that I'm a professor of marketing by training, and I sometimes think it's a moot point, because in industry, in business, you teach people that you should orient yourself to the consumer. For education, a very large consumer is the industry or the society. So it's a moot point that you need to take your cue of the curriculum or the teaching processes, of the inputs that you provide from the ultimate consumer who has to use the products of your education. Doesn't happen in practice. However, if you're talking about practices, I would like to share my experiences from IGNOU. I worked for 23 long years in that institution. Amazing platform to learn. But what I would like to share is way back in 1991, where we were launching the MBA program there, we had taken a conscious decision that not only do you plan curriculum for the program, you have what is called course curriculum planning at each course's granular level, and a clear understanding in both management, computers, and engineering. All of these was that at least 40% of the course committee, which used to be 8 to 7 people, would come from the industry. So, if you're planning a course on retail management, you get people from the retail association and so on. Therefore, at the stage of designing, you take the industry view in practice. The other part came in because most of our students were actually working students, and they brought in the industry purview in the sense of what works, what does not work, and brought it back onto the discussion forums. So that was, in a sense, IGNOU was a little ahead of its time, because these practices have been started in other institutions. There are institutions like the IMI and the MDI where I have been teaching, where the course coordinator, for example, I teach courses on services marketing and so on. So I was actually given a free hand to bring in industry experts wherever I thought. For example, logistics and media planning, it was always better to get an active practicing media planner to come and talk about it, rather than me giving them a theoretical this thing. And even if I bring in examples, I can only be giving anecdotal examples, whereas these people can talk about the challenges right there and engage the student, involve them, throw challenges in front of them, so that they can then solve them in real time. So part action learning also takes place. As far as the practices in across the globe are concerned, there are very interesting examples. I was talking about my experience in Malaysia. They have uh, A1, I1. That means you take 1 year in the academics, take 6 months in the industry, come back for 1 year. So all the engineering programs in the Malaysian qualification framework design some of the uh, B Tech programs, in the sense that it was A1, E1, A1, I1, that you spend some time here, spend an equal time in the industry, come back. They call them immersion programs. And I'm very happy to report that some of the more entrepreneurial universities in India are actually starting to do all of that and engage industry. We have other points to talk about in relation to how technology can facilitate all of that. So you don't really need to physically have people on, as you can engage them over in discussion over web and wire. But we can talk about that later. I'm very conscious of the time limit. I only need to say that we need to have a triple helix structure. And in some of the discussion that we talk about industry, because industry is a user of the talent, they need to come in for course curriculum and so on. One aspect that is not talked about, we will talk about later, I'm sure, because there is a question to that, is relating to the product of academic research fueling innovations in industry. We'll talk about it as the time comes. I'd like to thank you now and stop here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Madhukala ji. Thanks a lot. A lot of good points about immersion program. I'll come back to you. And
Yeah.
even I was just reading a newspaper article which had said that 80% of the engineers out of which we produce 14 lakh per year are unemployable in terms of skills. So what Professor Rena said, what you said, I think we need to have the way you said about the Malaysia example, that the industry people have to take a sabbatical from their job and work in a institution or a university for 6 months and deliver an entire module sort of thing. So that is, I think, needed. I'll come over to Professor Sujata Shahi ji. Madam, what do you think? What we should do as a group talk, and what the recommendations you feel?
Thank you, Pankaj, and I completely agree with Professor Rana and Professor Madhulika. But we should have like a dedicated policy to implement. We private players already, whatever example Professor Madhulika and Professor Rana has suggested, we implement. We have in our university second year courses we do not teach as an academician. We call practitioners to teach those courses because those courses are electives that will give help in skill development. But what I personally feel, there is a lack of policy, universal policy to implement all these industry academia meet. And Professor Madhulika talk about Princeton, Stanford, and other colleges. They all are private players. They all are tied up with some industry to work with for any kind of product development, even a single change in process. They take help of academician and both join hand together for any work. But Pankaji, replacing an old compartmental learning with a revolutionary policy calls for a change at a massive level. Not only, not only, can you hear me?
Yes.
Some words were lost. Yeah. Now it's okay.
Sorry. Pankaji, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. We can hear you now. Yes,
Yeah.
madam, we can hear you.
So just I was talking about, sorry for, old age, like compartmental learning with a revolutionary policy calls for a change at a massive level, not like particular private universities and central universities and state universities. This can only happen if the industry as a change agents and academician as a change makers come together to not just integrate required skill sets in curriculum but involve industry people in developing and teaching the modules. I can share one of the data which I got. Times of India report says industry academia linkage in India is only 4.7 out of 10. This is the percentage, less than 50%. The clear reason behind it is lack of clear policy strengthening these ties. We private universities are free to call academician. We do roundtable just to know about the upcoming trend and future trend in industry, what they are doing. We can integrate, we can call industry people. But what happened to central university and government universities where mass production of people, of student? So this is the one concern we have to handle. And as Professor Rana said, since last 7 years we are talking about industry academia meet. We have changed, private people, they have changed themselves. But what happened to government is they have a bandwidth to invite academic people, industry people to teach certain issues. We have policy, we should have a complete rigor policy. NEP says you can marry hand with academy industry people, but how? So my only question is, whatever we do to improve the quality of student and skills of students, we are doing, but we don't have a universal policy to implement all these nitty gritty of work. And Pankaji, right now, only 30% of our graduates may eventually work at jobs that do not exist. They're just getting placed for the sake of placement. That job doesn't exist. They don't have a skill about artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics. 3 days back, you can see one article in Times of India. They have mentioned data analytics is the buzz for IIM Bangalore. All good students are placed. Do we have pathways or competencies to teach complete pathways of data analytics? So your one point is faculty. So this is all the concerns. And we are just thinking in the dark, not implementing anywhere. So my suggestion is, because I don't want to repeat the same thing which other esteemed panelists have said. I just agree with them. But my suggestion, a PAC network, they can raise these issues to have a universal common policies for colleges, universities to implement, to instruct, to marry hand with industry people, so we can have a robust curriculum, updated curriculum. In central and other universities, they teach just the old one. Their faculty are not aware about the current system. Like simple example, design thinking. Design thinking can help any student in ideation, creativity. So that course is now mandatory. But find out how many colleges are teaching this design thinking, machine learning. I can talk about one like law. It's a very common course. We are not talking about one like MBA only. Like maritime law, space law, these are very, very important. So without taking much time, I just finish here. I will contribute in other points.
Sure, sure, sure. Thank you, Professor Shai. Thanks, good points. I think what I can feel and what the panel is trying to say is that the government has to make a strict policy because private universities are doing a lot of work, a lot of industry engagement is there. But as Madam just said that 60% or 50% of the central government universities are churning out most of the graduates in engineering and business. They need to have some industry curriculum. I personally think, sometime we should have like, I think 5 years back or 10 years back, I don't know, that government of India introduced that all the corporates have to spend 5% of their money on CSR work. I think similarly, they should have like 10% of the money which the company earns has to go into academic institutions, workshops, trainings, and all. I think therefore, like the policy change has to happen. Okay, I'll now come over to our industry expert as Yashwantji is from industry. So, Yashwantji, what do you think? What the industry wants, what the university wants, and how can you think we should take it further?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pankaj, sir. Okay, and first of all, thank you for all the senior panelists who have been enlightening me with a lot of knowledge and a lot of ideas here, because I'm a very junior person to all of, with looking at your senior experts and the ideas which has been shared. I'm really happy to be a part of this particular panel discussion with all the guests of honors down who's speaking down today. And first of all, when it comes down to the universities, Yashwant Prakash from Audilite School of Sound Engineering. It's an education institution for entertainment and media industry. We come under a skill sector, which is totally belonging to practicality more than theoretical. And especially when it comes to the skill oriented, we look out for industry partnership. And without industry partnership, I don't think so we would be able to achieve any success for the students' future. So, today, as I have seen down how, we have NSDC, National Skill Development Council, providing a lot of opportunities. It may be any skill-related particular subject apart from the skill related to our particular school. I think more we look forward for even universities, which we have been associated with in south of India, where we've been looking out for partnerships where even we are making sure that we are service providers to them as we work as an industry specialist to them. So we have people, a few university who contacts us to provide them, curriculums. We build syllabus. We make certain policies to ensure that there is a roadmap and a future for the student to enter into the industry and have a qualifying certificate during the course period and the completion, which is actually supposed to be something like a feather along with the certification, which is going to be in the end. And I also feel today as the skill, along with the subjects what we choose otherwise, apart from the vocational, it's very important even for the government to take a look into the subsidiaries which is being told for the skill-oriented subjects. It may be the private players from the universities, or it would be the government, colleges who already have these particular subjects, but we never see right infrastructure. We have never seen the technology being used in the right way. We have never seen international collaborations because today entertainment media is something very important. For example, today we have all joined through a platform. We're using a technology aspect here. We have a video aspect, and I come from an audio background where the audio needs to have a clarity. So, for example, even this software, before being launched, it has been tested by engineers like us to ensure if the quality of the audio is going to be good or not, or whichever medium we are using to communicate at the present moment where we are viewing. So the international standards, were going back to the main particular sector, like international collaborations is much required because of the technology, how it has been expanded today. And the schooling as well, when it comes to e-learning today because of the COVID as well, how things have come. So I personally feel, we need more support from the government as well to ensure, to aid a lot of, universities as well, also small institutions like us, as well as to make sure that the technology is rightly used, as well as the subjects needs to be also concentrated via the industry standards itself to ensure there's a right particular quality as well. This is what I personally feel.
Thank you, Ishwarji. Thank you. I just thought to add, I work for the University of Technology, Sydney in Australia at the college. And I think we have a lot of industry linkages, and you can see that students are involved, the faculty is involved, and there's a lot of teaching happening with industry curriculum also. So I think, as one of the panelists also said, we need to have a proper policy on it, which I think the government of India, as per the NEP, is trying to do some things. They have put in internships and all. I think they have put a point that all the universities should have a international office in their campuses, sort of thing. So I think something more has to be done on what to do in industry also. So I'll come back to Professor Rena. Professor Rena, what do you think is the role of incubators being played by them and centers of excellence in the academic institutions which are being run?
Thank you so very much for asking another very pertinent question. Role of these incubation and innovation centers, right? And also related to relevant question, the way the government is going and has gone all out to promote the culture of entrepreneurship and innovation all the country over by by equipping very select prominent places with robust Atal incubation centers, giving them grants worth crores of rupees, right? I can share with you the experience that I had at my previous place, JK Lakshpat University. We were one of the first, we were one of the first university systems in the country, in the state of Rajasthan, who got an opportunity to get in this Atal Incubation Center. The moment it came and the moment we started working on the project, trust you me, the ecosystem of the entire university was ripe and conducive to kindle in the kids the idea of innovation and entrepreneurship. So what we did, for example, in the first place, we requested IIT Kanpur, you every year host your alumni meets, alumni, those who have gone into their own entrepreneurial ventures. You do it every year at your place. This year, we want to take an opportunity of hosting it at our university. Trust you me, that was an amazing experience because on that platform, in that occasion, you saw the people budding, people with ideas, bubbling with ideas. You saw the experts shaping and fine tuning their ideas. You saw the investors showing interest in helping them with this. So all I'm saying is, if not now, it will be it will be too late for a country to respond to this. So I think it is high time that universities take it up upfront, collaborate with industry, because there are many problems with which our country is abounding in, right? And the problems are not that they require rocket science approach. They require small little innovative approaches to solve. And if the entrepreneurial and innovation systems are in place in universities, probably that will really help us do some justice to it. It has helped a great deal, and all that the university systems have not to just wait for getting grants from Atal Innovation Mission or many other bodies. They have to set up such a system which promotes this entrepreneurship and ecosystem in their respective institutions. The ideas will come and solutions will be there forthcoming. There is no dearth of talent in India. They have innovative ideas. They need someone who can handle them, who can guide them. But if the university is not only, what I have seen is universities are doing, again, I would say lip service. They teach a course on innovation, they teach a course on entrepreneurship. Provide them labs, provide them equipment, provide them expertise, provide them armory so that these ideas can flourish. My submission is let university understand the challenge of innovation and do everything possible to address it. That's my submission.
Thank you, sir. I think in Atal Innovation, I think they were giving 100 crores to, I think, most of the universities, what I remember.
To begin with 10 crores. To begin with 10 crores. They have, no, I have got one of the first, one among the first allottees to get the 10 crore project, right? And they have different schemes. In schools and colleges, they have those tinkering labs and whatnot. What I am saying is our Modi ji, our government is all interested in promoting innovation and entrepreneurial culture in Indian education system at all levels, schools, higher secondary education, colleges, and universities. Let us use it.
Yes, sir. I think there is a positive thing, because if you see today, these days, Times of India, earlier I think only once they used to have article on startups and all, but these days every day of the newspaper has one page dedicated to entrepreneurship, startups, IT sector. So I think that's a very positive move. And I'll come back to Professor Kaushik. Professor Kaushik, what do you think? Incubators and this technology
Pankaj
and
sir, Pankaj sir, if you permit me, I have some emergency to take care of. Can I be
sure, sir.
excused for a while?
Sure, sir. No problems.
Thank
No
you so
problem. Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you, sir, for joining us.
I would request and urge and appeal to all the fellow panelists if they could be kind to share their emails uh, on the chat or somewhere so that we can just get in touch. We have to learn from each other. This is just the beginning of this acquaintance. I would like to take it forward. Thank you so very
Sure, sir.
much.
Thank you,
Sure,
sir.
Professor Rana will share.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Thank you, sir. On
Thank
behalf of
you.
APAC, thank you also. Sorry, Professor Kaushik. So, what are your views on incubators? Like
Yes,
you were hearing from Professor Rana.
Mr. Jain, thank you for this opportunity again. I'm actually very positive on, I mean, either because I spent a lot of time and the later part of my career in trying to mainstream technology supported education and technology supported collaboration, both in Malaysia. And I spent about 3 years as a Commonwealth higher education expert working for 54 countries, most of which are Commonwealth countries, which are most of them are underdeveloped countries. So we try to mobilize the role of technology into creating access for education, creating access for new entrepreneurs and so on. So I'm very bullish on it. Now we've tried to use some of these things in our own universities, but let me take a step back. We are today, I mean, Dr. Shahi, Professor Shahi, hinted at it, and we are living in an age of disruptive innovation. The industry has completely changed. Consumers have changed in the way they acquire information, acquire products, experience products, do their shopping, get their information search validated by other searches. Now, for all of that, if you look at the way industry has changed, and my discipline, which is management, another discipline, which is computer science, engineering, are all disciplines where practice actually outpaces theory. things go and happen in practice, and then academics try to sort of work out how do we try to bring this in and try to sort of build up the conceptual background to support the learning that is going on. And therefore we will have to be very, very proactive. An incubator, on the other hand, is a sort of a uh, practice to try out in a small situ things that need to take wings as we go on. Now, what is happening? The thing that makes me very happy in even in smaller universities and smaller areas is that there is a certain culture of risk-taking behavior coming in our youth. The number of people who wanted to go and do a 9 to 5 job, the preference even in smaller states like Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Bihar is changing. People want to be job creators rather than, when we take an orientation for our students, there are quite a lot of people who say we have a fairly active Department of Agriculture, where about 130 students come in every year. Almost 40% of them said they want to set up value added agricultural enterprises and so on, which is very good. Now, the role of the incubator is important in the sense it allows the students to get the benefit of what is called actionable expertise from whichever resources are there in the university. I won't really, because we've already talked about the Atal scheme and so on. But sometimes there are developments in the outside environment which actually fuel this spirit of startup, fuel this spirit of, and I think in India that moment has come. We all went through COVID. We went through just before that economic downturn in large parts of the world, and a lot of Indians started coming back to India to start up their enterprises in India because of whatever the interest costs and so on, cost of capital being what it is, and therefore, and finding more conducive. So, if you can see the number of unicorns that we've had in the last 5 years and compare them to the previous 5 years, you will be very pleasantly surprised. So, all of these things are happening, and India is at the right juxtaposition of environmental preparedness, policy facilitation, and a sort of change of mindset among the youngsters themselves. People are actually not very prone for a 9 to 5 job. I have I have my only child who's a very established corporate lawyer. They all talk in terms of ducking it and starting enterprises at their fat corporate salaries. They still want to go ahead and do that. So that mindset has come in, and the institution of incubations and small experimental cultures that universities are starting is very, very positive toward it. So I'm very bullish on this. This has to grow. The only thing that we need to do is get industry involved in the form of actually putting their money where their mouth is, in the sense that they all want the benefits of these small research activities, projects, action learning projects to be mainstream in the industry. They need to take active stakeholdership, and in my part of the country, where we've started an institution of research chairs being funded by the industry, but the main purpose is to support an incubating activity of one particular kind. So there are people who are coming in for sustainable development, people who are coming in for agriculture and so on. But this needs to be more widespread. You are very right that government alone cannot keep on doing that. The industry will have to come in, the society will have to come in, and sometimes it's a good idea for universities to get together and share some of these incubation related expenses by forming a consortium of eastern universities, or forming this consortia and doing these things together. Sometimes there is great opportunity in learning from each other and supporting each other, and we all move together. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, madam. Thanks a lot. I think all the points talk about the government in the last 10 years has done. You have talked about the new startup which have come, the unicorns which have come. Now we have Skill India, we have Digital India, Yashwanji is from NSDC division sort of thing. So all these is pointing towards entrepreneurship, innovation. The point is how to get industry involved. So I'll come to Professor Shai. Madam, what do you think? Are we doing enough in innovations, incubators, and all these Atal mission, or we need to do something more?
Uh, Thank you, Pankaj ji. Not exactly as per mark, but we are working on it. We are moving towards success. First of all, I would like to thank you, our Honorable Prime Minister, for the concept of self-reliant India and vocal for local. These are two concepts which are creating a buzzword amongst students. Now they are thinking towards like self-reliant India, and they have to think differently, and they have a feeling of, because of excess of information which they have, which current generation has, that gives them one edge to work on like new venture creation, or moving towards rather job seekers to job creators. This one is one concept which I felt very very like evolving in this current generation. You talked about like involvement of industry. Pankaji, you are in Australia. You know, in US and Australia and other places, each university has certain labs provided by industry, and jointly student work with industry people on a certain project, which helps in research work, new product development processes, and joining hand with industry for future development. So this is happening in west, in other countries. Here in India, if you take count of IITs, they have already joined hand, and they have like in their premises in number of labs, and that is why their patent is high, their like investment is high. But here always I feel that we are here to promote this concept and inculcate in the mind of our students, but the end result, how to boost, how to like promote these kind of culture. Although Yashwantji is here, NSDC does lots of activities. Sector skill councils are doing well and promoting these kind of activities. But you talked about the percentage. We are far, like we have to go like quite. Another thing which we feel, incubators provide support in developing association between academia and industry for tapping potential technology, ideas, innovations for venture creations, capacity building, and skill development. By actually efficiently exploiting the expertise, research and development facilities, mentoring is very important. Patenting support, government has already lowered the patent fees. So these are the creates support creates ecosystem, even network, market, mentoring. These are important. Your infrastructure, which we have in our premises, these are certain things will create a perfect ecosystem to promote the creativity of our students, and that will help in self-reliant India, and basically creation of certain jobs. Even you can take, I think Jans have talked about Atal Incubation Center. From school, I have seen the change also in schools due to tinkering lab. Right now, 8,706 tinkering labs are working, functional. They have changed the mindset of students, growing student, to just think slightly differently. They're not coming up with the mindset. I can see MBA students. Initially, I was thinking about 100% placement, 80% eligible to be placed, but now we have data, 30% they refuse to take placement, either joining the family business or starting a venture. So these kind of mindset is like coming, but still we have to like create a perfect strategy to boost. And what you said, the involvement of industry is very much required. Until and unless support and funding from industry, like just to create and for the namesake center of entrepreneurship, or that will not work. So that we need to work on it. That kind of like joining hand, these are must. And even government policy like alumni support, government policy, industry, chamber of commerce, I think these are certain like different verticals which can join hand, and we can give a boost to entrepreneurship in India.
Very good. Thank you, madam. A lot of good points, I think, and I think the way all panelists have been saying, we need work. Entrepreneurship is growing, but what is missing is some funding to government industries as well as private industries from the industry So some fund has to be created, like industry fund, to boost universities. Like government is doing whatever they can do. They have limited funds, but industry should devote like 5%, 10%
Yeah.
fund for industry
Actually,
academic curriculum also.
yeah, actually, Deepak ji, they need help from academician because they want to develop product. And academician and scientists, if they join hand together, that will create a different impact on new ways, products. Or even right now, we are not aware, Pankaj ji, ki after 5 years, what kind of courses I will teach
Absolutely.
and the way we will
Yeah.
teach. This pandemic has taught us to move online. And I don't know after 5 years what will happen. So basically, we have to join hand which sector is going down, which sector is coming up. Until unless we have information from industry, we can't develop a perfect curriculum.
Very true. Very true. Very true. Thank you, madam. Thank you for good points. And Yashwanji, I thought, like, since you, I think it's a entrepreneurship venture you have started with NSDC. So, like, if you could quickly like say what, how did it come to you that you want to start this sector
I
of
just
yours?
had one point before I, answer to the question, Mr. Pankaj sir. As Madam Professor Sujata ma'am just was telling, collaboration and joining hands was very important. What I find, just the way it is also linking to the question what you have asked me at the present moment. The reason to start off something which is skill oriented school. This is something which is a point which made me think about. Like I would like to mention few universities like Full Sail University. I could say Westminster University, or I could say Vancouver University. These are the universities which are covering very much into the entertainment and media sector, skill oriented sectors, and we have a lot of students from India as well who are planning to take up the programs outside India. Even though we have a lot of potential here, we have a lot of students who are walking out of India and making a career outside and being a part of the industry of the others. When we are creating Skill India, this is something that we have our particular students. We have candidates who are really skillful, who need support in India. So as ma'am she mentioned that they're joining hands. I personally urge that the universities also needs to take a look into. Not all universities are having much of the subjects which is related to the entertainment and media. When we say music, it's always about BA in music, which comes down to the instruments, and it may come down to the vocals, or classical, Carnatic, and Western. Technology, when we speak about, there is a lot of electronic music production, there is sound engineering, audio engineering, which is very important today for the industry, because that plays a vital role. Even if it is a news channel, even if there's a disaster going like COVID, we switch on a news channel and there is an audio engineer with a microphone, or cleaning the audio, making sure the audio is being delivered. Similarly, there is a lot of outcomes, like we have collaborations with radio stations, television channels, broadcasting centers, gaming, or sound designing, animations. There's live sound engineering as well, which comes into even acoustics, even like soundproofing, theaters. It's a very big, vast industry, is what I would say. When the question, when you asked me like how this motivated me, was even me as a student. When I wanted to do this, there was nothing as this subject in India. I was supposed to go to Ireland, and then I was supposed to do my sound engineering there for a year. Then for my masters, then I was supposed to go to my Australia, and it was costing a bomb, like and then I used to be thinking, okay, now when I'm going to be spending so much of money, how am I going to be repaying back my loans? And this is how it used to come to my mind. And that's when when after completing my education, that's when I personally felt that the same quality, same standards needs to be provided in India, and especially in southern India. There are a lot of top class, top notch institutes which is providing educations today, and not many, but very few of them. And I urge that universities needs to take this up very importantly as a subject which is a part of entertainment and media sector, and give all those facilities to our students in India, and provide them to do it over here, just the way they say make in India. They get a lot of savings, they get a lot of time to be a part of the Indian industry itself, and even for the placements as well. There is a lot of scope and opening down. So this made me think that I should be one of a beginner, one of a person to start off, to be firstly not to get deviated from the audio industry. So to be in the circle. So when I teach, and I also learn, and I'm making sure that I'm not being deviated. This was my first initial thing, to be sticking on to what my particular subject was, what my passion was. And this particular program, what we have done till 10 years, we have been running diploma, we've been running degrees, we've been associated with a couple of universities, providing them curriculums and syllabus. It's very few in India, as per my mentioning again repeatedly. I really request the other universities to take a look into it for the industry collaborations. We have a lot of industry partners. We have international industry partners as well, trying to collaborate, sponsor, as well as for the equipments and each and everything. And I think this should be taken a note at.
Thank you, Ishwarji. I think
Thank you.
it's good to see that you have started a company called Audio Life School of Education, which is a very unique thing. And that too in the young age to do such ventures, entrepreneurship is what we have been talking about. Entrepreneurship is what you have shown actually in practical life. So nice of you. Thank
Thank you,
you,
sir.
and best of luck to you. And
Thank you.
I think we just have the last 10, 15 minutes. So I just have the last thing, like as per the new NAP, obviously we have been talking about internships have been going on for the last 25, 30 years. I'm an engineer from Delhi, so we had internships. But do you think like internships, something has changed in the last 15, 20 years? Is the industry coming over to universities and saying that we want so many interns, or it is still the placement cell and the students running after industry to get them internships? Over to Professor Madhulika ji.
Uh, Mr. Jain, I think the practice is changing a bit because sometimes, and again, I'll talk about practices across. Um, if you're talking about places like Malaysia, Indonesia, even Singapore, industry has become smart enough to treat our interns as low paid labor, right? So they already have ideas like, these are the problems that we need to have dedicated work done on. For example, in the sugarcane belt or in the palm oil belt, they had this problem of seasonal absenteeism. So the company executives are too busy to give a sort of a detailed research and interest on that. So the time the interns start coming in, we'll give it to them as a project and let them work on it. So it's HR project to be given. So the understanding, the industry also needs to, while you're right, the placement department starts preparing the interns and I ask them to identify projects that they'll be working on. I think industry needs to take a more proactive role in trying to identify the role that they want, the use that they want to make of the interns. It would be a what is called a value plus situation or a positive sum game if both parties do a collaboration. I look at internship. One is that universities look at internship as something that needs to be done. So you need to have 8 weeks, the students to go out, there has to be a project report, there has to be a presentation. And so that is part of the process. What is required to be looked at both in terms of both the stakeholders, the university as well as the industry. The university needs to very clearly articulate what are the objectives that I need my internship program to fulfill for me. So like we do course learning outcomes for all courses, we need to have learning outcomes very clearly identified for our internship program. And then at the level of, we go granular, we go at the level of each intern group and tell them that this is the outcome we are looking for in terms of learning and in terms of outcomes that you will bring in from your learning. The industry, on the other hand, needs to have a very clear idea of how are they going to utilize this young mindset that is coming to them. Of course, they are givers in the sense that they're giving the experiences, but they also need to utilize the kind of energy, the kind of enterprise, the kind of ideas that these young people can bring in, and also pairs of fresh eyes looking at their own practice, and if there are things that they want to point out. So we have started now putting a mentor. For each group of 4 students, there is a faculty mentor who would work with the concerned industry to find out how exactly do you want to utilize them. Apart from giving a sort of a stated project, do you intend to make use of the learning that the students have some way in your own department? So industry also needs to look at it. We need to change our mindset on internship being a program requirement and being fulfilled and a box being ticked to make actively making a learning use and a learning outcome use of all of this. So there is an issue of pedagogy, but there is also an issue of igniting the young minds. So when they see these practices, how do they bring it back and how do they want to then uh, I always say that in a class of 30 students, if they go out, they bring in experiences of 30 industries. So think of how much richer your fourth semester is going to be because all those practices are being talked about. So we already also created an LMS based discussion board where even while the students are there, they are bringing in, they're talking about this is what happened to me. This is, I mean, it may be a simple thing like an organizational behavior issue that this is what I was taught talk to like. So it, what the conflict that is going on between the line manager and the expert or whatever. So all of these they're encouraged to put in so that other students can get a window in their in the intern who's writing in their work environment, and they can begin what is called a buzz of development. Now this particular discussion board is open only to students. The mentors can come in and look at whether the discussion is going on in the right direction, and then when they come back and submit the report, we open up a larger discussion on some of these things and they can talk about that. So think of those 30 experiences coming back to the class and everyone getting enriched. We also then go back and try to have a discussion with the industry HR people who help them in being given the projects and so on. And apart from a mere submission, a discussion on the problems that they would like to be addressed next time so that we can think in terms of live action projects which can be given to the students even when they are not on the industry campus. So if there are problems that they can work on now that they know your enterprise and now that they are more aware of what goes on here in respect of their chosen topic. So would you like to think of problems that we could help you solve? So we go, the industry also may not have a very healthy respect on what can, conceptualize academics, think about our problem. But when you involve students who've been there and try to work on some of those things, at least 4 to 5 actual projects do come back. So I think uh, we are moving forward. The both parties need to sort of reassess the way they have been using internship as a mere requirement of an academic program and to derive value out of it because there is great opportunity in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Madhulika ji. Thank you. Good points. I think still we need to do work on this area. And
Sure.
Professor Shai, what do you think? Have we done something in last 25 years, or we are still asking industry to give internship for my students?
No, we have changed a lot. Industry has also changed a lot. That time has gone where that 6 credits were part of their curriculum. Okay, you have to go for internship, and especially. But here I have 2 observations: one for MBA, another for engineering. MBA, we are getting good live projects. Even before internship, we are getting live projects because both have certain objectives. If industry has some small project, they prefer to take students rather than hire one employee on that project. So that kind of live project we are getting. And for my university, this one is benefit that we are sitting in the corporate hub of North India, Gurgaon. So we are getting continuously live projects. Now, internship. So, internship, what we inculcate before I go for process, inculcate in our students, there should be a purpose in your life for internship. It's not a random. You have a purpose. Either you want to start a venture or you want to go for a job, there should be a purpose. And another, you should have passion to work on it. Now we are getting almost like 80% students on good stipend and plus PPOs also for internship. As Professor Madhulika said, we have also a very rigorous process with a complete module with learning outcomes, and we give one academic mentor and one industry mentor to each student. Like I have 5 my mentees who are working under me, but I interact with 5 industry people for my learning also, and just see the progress of my mentees, and plus the kind of learning they're taking place in organization. But this one is happening, Pankaji, for MBA. Very good, and we are getting very good response. But engineering, they're just for the sake of like project, they're going for industry. Even the industries do not have bandwidth to train the number of students we are producing. Even NASCOM report, you can see, McKinsey Global Institute shows that global corporations find only 25% of Indian engineers employable. And according to NASCOM, over 3 million undergraduates and postgraduates are added to the workforce every year. See the ratio, the employable, how industry will train properly those the number of students which we have. So here we have challenge for certain courses, but no, trend had changed, and even industry, they are very concerned about selecting students. They select through different ways, some competition, some kind of activities. They recruit gaming, gamification. They float certain questions, students answer those questions, especially bank in India, they select on that basis the internship. It means even they are willing to train students who can be potential employees in their organization. This is the perspective. So trends have changed.
Thank you, madam. Thanks to all the panelists now. I think it's over to Rajneesh ji.
If I may, Mr. Jain, just bring in with
Sure,
one small input. I'm sorry I'm
sure, sure.
speaking out of turn. But when you said has industry changed, there is a sea change. There was a time where placement officers used to be running after the industry to please, accommodate so many people and so on. Something has changed. Something has changed in the sense. Industry has also now started people that you worked with earlier. They now are listing that we would be requiring the area where my university is placed is Ranchi, Jharkhand, and it's the mining belt. So we used to be running after these people. Now, sometime around the month of March, the industry requirement starts coming in that we will be requiring 5 people in this and 4 people in this, which is something very positive. I was also listening to our industry expert. Now we have a program in journalism and mass communication. The community radio people have started coming in to ask for our interns so that they can that the special projects that they are starting on their own radio, they can use. I don't like to use the word cheap labor, but free human power to experiment out with some of those. So those are some of the changes that are coming in. Of course, the NBA situation is much better, as Sujata ji said, that because the tradition of internship and utilizing the projects has been there, uh, the situation is much better there. But what is also interesting is the NGOs now coming in to ask for interns. They never used to think in terms of formalized education. So that is something of a new thing. There is this third party mediation where industry organization coupled with academia have. I would like to talk about an organization called Talent Edge. They come and collaborate with institutions, and they've come to talk to some of our universities where they say the MBA student will get his job in the first semester with a specific industry. And after the first semester, where the base courses are being taught, the remaining courses, the related industry and the related functional area head would be coming to teach them. So by the time they pass out, this question of graduates being unemployable will not be there because they'll be industry ready. So if they're doing financial analysis, they will be doing it with respect to that financial services major which has employed them. So they are trying to train people on the campus with respect to their own requirements. So the faculty comes in to do the conceptual understanding. The remaining part is actually being done by the industry themselves. So I thought this was we are trying to sign up with them. I mean, they're very keen that we sign up with more students. Right now 14 students have been signed up. So I hope this is a trend that will grow, and industry would actually take a more what is called the word proactive is overused, but sort of a pre-employment interest in the student, in participating, becoming a co-partner in their training rather than taking the end product only. Thank you.
Thank you, all the panelists. I think it was a good discussion, and I hope some industry people and government policy makers are listening. That is what the purpose of all these sessions are. Thank you, Professor Madhurika ji. Thank you, Professor Sujata ji. And thank you, Yashwant ji. Over to Rajneesh ji, if you want to thank.
Yeah, one is it was very heartening to hear that while Professor Madhulikaji rightly mentioned that earlier it was the placement officers running after industry. And it's heartening to hear the shoe is on the other side, whatever might be the motivation.
Yeah.
Okay, free labor, internship, or whatever might be the motivation, but at least that industry academia interface is bearing the right outcomes, if I may say. That's the most important thing I feel that has come out of this discussion also. And great, all the panelists and also Pankajji for moderating this discussion. Wishing all of you a very good day, and thanks for participating in this interactive
We
discussion.
would also like to thank Pankajji for being a uh, very conducive moderator for all of us. We have
Thank
all
you.
had very
Thank you,
good
madam.
time, and my
Thank you,
fellow
madam. Thank you.
panelists for bringing in their valuable views. Thank you, everyone.